Note: before watching this one, I would recommend first seeing my videos on magic and Telor's creation myth, as I mention concepts and characters introduced in those ones quite a bit. Both will be linked in the description. Once the fires of creation and primordial chaos cooled and rested, the world of Arduin was inherited by the Saiar Din. They were 3 in number: the gods, the arch-dragons, and the giants, each made from an aspect of the Lord God, Torque's being. The gods were born from his mind and took the greatest of his being. They were divine, manifestations of the world, and were immortal, undying except by their own hand or by the hand of the other gods. At first, it is said that there are 28, yet over the eons they reproduced, and now hundreds of minor gods populate mortality's mythology and stories. They were given stewardship of the heavens, to protect Arduin from nameless horrors from beyond the stars and any stellar debris which may fall to Earth. The arch-dragons were born from Torque's wrath, the fiery anger which blazed so that it may protect creation. These beings are the fathers and mothers of all draconic kin, including the worms, father worms, dragons, and lesser dragons, such as drakes and drema. These beings were set with the task of stewardship over the primordial fire deep within Arduin, so that the restless inferno of the very planet may not consume itself. The giants were the last and lesser of the Saiar Din, less divine and more mortal. However, their lack of perceiving the grander picture of creation and the threats which dared to destroy Arduin would work in their favour. For their task was not of the great powers of fire and frost, but rather a smaller scale. Their stewardship was over life itself, the evolution and breath of animals, trees, mortals, and all other things. It is said that their final task would be to teach intelligent life, called mortals, language, magic, astronomy, geography, and metallurgy. For eons, the 3 races of the Saiar Din prevailed over their realms: Earth for the arch-dragons, the skies for the gods, and the sea and all its creatures for the giants. However, they would fade. The arch-dragons were the first, as they were born from Torque's wrath and rage. They sputtered and died, as all anger dies in the end after eons of weathering. Their divine bloodline would be diluted and watered down through the generations, until their offspring had become the very beasts and animals they had held their heads so high above for eons. Next were the gods. In their protection of the ethereal, of the sky and unseen powers, they too became unseen by mortals and entered their own separate realm. They command their influence and stewardship from there, a realm known as Telor Elind, Godhome in the Finori tongue. The giants were the last, and still lived into the era of civilization and mortality. In that uncountable time they had diverged into many races, with the stone giants looking over the life of the mountains, sea giants over the life of the sea, and so on and so forth. When mortality arose with fire, the giants grew apprehensive, as they knew teaching these strange creatures magic and metallurgy was their last task before they too would fade one way or another. The sea and forest giants simply left, becoming one with their environments, their charges, so to speak, to forever watch over them. And yet the stone giants stayed, the last giants left upon Telor, and they decided to teach mortals. By the time the first stone giants came down from the mountains to greet mortality, large cities had already been built, thousands of years had passed, and civilizations of bronze and monarchies had begun. This is the point at which myth merges with history, as it is a commonly understood fact that the stone giants were a real race of humanoid creatures, and about 2,000 years ago they taught mortality runic magic. Of course, mortals had magic such as searing, blood art, and thaumaturgy before this, feats, yet none could guarantee power. Those were subtle arts of healing, of prophecies and foresight, useless for warfare or politics. Runes, however, could conjure vortices of power and magic, could create lightning and flame, and all it cost was the life of a soldier as the scourge, the withering plague upon all users of Arcanum, took them. At first, interactions were peaceful. Trading outposts between man, dwarves, and the giants were built, and their structures are still seen today. Iron and the knowledge to forge it was the first gift of the giants, and the second was said to be of astronomy, of how the celestial spheres moved, and how Arnuin circled the sun in a great revolution eternally, and of how the stars were vast domains of fire and light. The next was geography, cartography, and the earth. The giants taught mortals the lay of old Telor and its greatest mountains and deepest, most foreboding depths. They showed them the winds and the great circular motions of the seas. Their fourth and final gift was of course runes and magic. The giantish runes is light magic of tempest, consecration, lightning, enchantment, and protection. The first mortal magicers and warlocks were unskilled and young. However, their power and influence grew as the art of runes spread to all nations of Telor. This great collective gifting of knowledge to mortals was drawn out over a century or two, judging by records from the time period which still survive, and is known as the Endowment. Kings and lords saw this new art, which could be used with great effect on the battlefield, and set up schools and great archives where magical lore and knowledge could be kept. The most notable of these was the dwarven city of Sterak, or at least the old ruins that the modern stronghold is now built on top of. In there, not only scrolls and scripts of power were kept, but also artifacts enchanted to perform magic when wielded, some new and some thousands of years old, transcending written history. Wars of Arcanum and mages were fought. The giants had not anticipated humanity's drive to progress and to grow, to increase its wealth and lands. The kingdoms of Taramir, the region which would one day come to be ruled by Iridair, were particularly fought over, with their ripe natural resources and fertile soil. Between 1700 and 1400 years ago, a span of 3 centuries, the region was rocked by war and hardship where cosmic fire, conjured plagues, and desolation swept Taramir. This period was known as the Folly of Lords and is a black mark on Telor's history. Of course, the giants were appalled at this use of their craft, their gifts. Their secret councils and leaders were unknown. However, the old trading outposts, such as Doranos and Kivalif, grew quiet and decrepit, home only to wild beasts and bandits plundering the abandoned workshops and auditoriums. This is accepted by modern scholars as the stone giants' abandonment of mortality. Some might have followed in the footsteps of their sea and forest giant brethren, becoming one with their mountain homes to watch over them eternally. Others may have abandoned Telor entirely and sailed to new lands. However, a decent population remained, building massive, interweaving citadels and stone fortresses to watch over humanity as stewards, with a strong hand and keen eye. The breaking point occurred 1600 years ago, at the end of the giantish Golden Age, the so-called Age of Runes. The exact causes and events are unknown, as a short dark age of few records and historical texts lead to little information on this period. What is known is that a king of the Hishlands, likely Aramas, the cruel of the Broros kingdom, split off from the giantish teachings. Until now, there is only one school of runes, light magic. However, Aramas and his court of astrologers, mages, and seers saw the giantish teachings as a way to confine mortality, to limit them, and allow the giants total rulership of Telor and beyond by controlling the flow of magical teachings. It is said that after many nights and crazed hallucinations, this king, Armas, we shall assume for the sake of simplicity, invented a new form of magic. By subtly tweaking runes and incantations, he created fire magic, the school of the inferno, ash, passion, and raw, unbridled rage. He spread his own teachings to the rest of the Hishlands, up the Relkar Channel. He taught that the giantish light magic was chains to bind humanity, and that they must break off and form their own schools of magic. They should fight against the giants. Of course, this was nothing less of heresy against the very beings who had taught mortality the secrets of astronomy, geography, and arcanum. However, word had reached the Hishlanders of the construction of great citadels and fortresses in the Ice Spire Mountains, and by the giants no less. This only increased paranoia across Telor of the heavy hand the giants had in their history and politics. Soon rebellion followed, and next the War of Ironblood. This was the, quite literally, bloodiest conflict to strike Telor in written history, not since the mythological clash of the original gods, Turk and Mashanael. The exact details and major players in the war shall be covered another time, but its impact on Telor cannot be overstated. The old elven empires, struggling to carry on, were finally put down. The mountain of Garul Ashag was completely levelled in a battle between the best sages the giants had and Armas himself in his archmage court. It is said that momentarily, or at least momentarily on a cosmic scale, Arcanum's slow wilting halted as the primordial source of magic flowed freely into the world. The monumental Udruin Empire fell in the fighting. Meanwhile, mad sorcerers drunk on power summoned leviathans from the depths of the ocean. After it ended, and the ashes settled, the giants were gone. It is unknown how they vanished, whether they went away like their brethren into the mountain homes, or if they sailed the darkening sea, finally abandoning Telor. Maybe they just simply died out in the fighting. All that is known is that the Dark Age following the War of Ironblood ended around 1300 years ago, give or take. This would end the era of giants, and end the eon in which magic still walked Telor. The eon where beings which had met the gods and were made from Torque's very essence ended. The giants were the last remnant of a time before Telor, a time before Arcanum was closed off from the world, and the wonders and monsters made from it were pushed to the edges of civilization. Thus started the current era, the era of isolation, where mortality was left to walk its own path throughout the ages. I hope that you all enjoyed this one. I've been working hard on Telor behind the scenes, and I know I say this every goddamn video, but I really do appreciate all the support and the growth the channel has been getting despite its small size. Next time, I'll cover the main gods of the primary Teloran religion, the very same gods born from Torque's mind. See you then.